The Philippines and Sabah, a lost claim. Welcome to this animated exploration of how the Philippines lost its claim to Sabah, a story rooted in history, expanded by geopolitics, and shrouded in legal ambiguity. This episode dives into treaties, colonial powers, regional alliances, and the stakes of sovereignty in Southeast Asia. If you're a history enthusiast or a curious observer of geopolitics, buckle up for this journey into one of Southeast Asia's most enduring territorial disputes. Southeast Asia is a region rich in culture, history, and shared legacies. At its northern edge lies the Philippines, an archipelago with historical ties to the sprawling Sultanate of Sulu. Just across the Sulu Sea lies Sabah, the easternmost territory of Malaysia today. Though an important part of Malaysia now, Sabah's story has long been intertwined with the Philippines. Understanding this territorial debate requires a dive into the past, a time of sultanates, colonial powers, and shifting alliances that laid the groundwork for contention. To kick off, we'll journey back to the late 19th century when a crucial agreement set the stage for this dispute. Our story begins in 1878. The Sultanate of Sulu, an influential Islamic entity in the southern Philippines, engaged in a transaction with the British North Borneo Company. The Sultanate, needing resources and assistance, signed an agreement granting rights to administer Sabah. But this is where the tale grows contentious. Was this agreement a lease, as the Sultanate contended, or outright cession, as the British and later Malaysia argued? The ambiguous wording of the original document, a mix of English, Malay, and local dialects, has left historians and countries debating its true intent for over a century. The Sultanate of Sulu retained sovereignty in its eyes, but to the British, the agreement allowed them unfettered control over Sabah. This lack of clarity sowed the seeds of a conflict that would escalate years later. Following the 1878 agreement, the British North Borneo Company began governing Sabah, developing its economy and settlements. By the early 20th century, Sabah had become a British protectorate under colonial administration. Maps began designating North Borneo as part of British territories, cementing its shift away from the Sultanate of Sulu's realm of influence. While the Sultan of Sulu continued to receive an annual payment for Sabah, interpreted by the Sultanate as rent and by the British as a token payment for cession, the gap between the two narratives grew. Through treaties and international agreements, Britain increasingly solidified its claim to Sabah, a claim that would later be inherited by Malaysia. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, colonial empires worldwide were crumbling and nations were reclaiming their independence. In 1946, the Philippines became an independent republic after centuries of Spanish and American rule. Around this time, Filipino leaders began to revisit the Sultanate of Sulu's legacy, tracing its ties to Sabah. In 1962, the Philippines formally claimed Sabah, arguing that as the heir to the Sultanate of Sulu's rights, it had a historical and legal basis to assert sovereignty. Amidst this, conversations swirled around the ambiguities of the 1878 agreement. This was not merely a bilateral matter. The emerging Cold War dynamics and decolonization movements also heightened the stakes for all parties involved. The turning point in this historical saga came in the early 1960s with the creation of the Federation of Malaysia. Sabah, along with Sarawak and Malaya, became part of this newly formed nation in 1963, laying the groundwork for today's modern Malaysia. Many in Sabah supported joining Malaysia, as it promised economic opportunity, political stability, and protection amidst the turbulent regional landscape. However, this move sparked immediate outrage from the Philippines, which viewed Sabah's incorporation as a violation of its historical sovereignty. The Philippines broke diplomatic relations with Malaysia, and the territorial dispute became an international affair, brought before forums like the United Nations. The Philippines presented its case forcefully, citing its historical ties to the Sultanate of Sulu and its interpretation of the 1878 agreement. Filipino diplomats argued that the Sultan's lease could not be equated to cession. Malaysia countered, stating that Sabah's integration into the Federation was legitimate and supported by the local population via a referendum overseen by the Cobble Commission. International organizations like the United Nations reviewed the matter, but their focus remained on regional stability. The dispute, while significant, was considered less pressing in a world increasingly polarized by the Cold War. This lack of global urgency ultimately weakened the Philippines' position. While the Philippines continued to press for its claim, internal and external pressures blunted its diplomatic efforts. Domestically, the country faced political turbulence and economic challenges, drawing attention away from external issues like Sabah. Regionally, Indonesia's confrontasi against Malaysia complicated matters, making Southeast Asia a hotbed of conflict in the early 1960s. As time marched on, Malaysia solidified its control over Sabah, weaving the region firmly into its national identity. Infrastructure projects, local governance, and economic integration reinforced its administration. For many Sabahans, Malaysia was now home, a reality that weakened historical claims from the Philippines. The Philippines failed to sustain its diplomatic push for Sabah due to several factors. First, its legal arguments, though robust, were overshadowed by Malaysia's practical control and international legitimacy. Second, a lack of unified political will in the Philippines diluted its efforts. Finally, Malaysia's growing influence in international relations, including its alliances with Western and Asian powers, positioned it as a strong and stable administrator of Sabah. By the 1970s, the Philippines' active pursuit of the Sabah claim had largely subsided, though the issue flared up occasionally in public discourse and diplomatic channels. Yet, for all practical purposes, Malaysia's sovereignty over Sabah has remained unchallenged on the ground. The tale of Sabah is not just about who owns a piece of land. It's a reflection of broader themes like nationhood, identity, and the impact of colonial legacies. For the Philippines, Sabah remains a reminder of its historical ties to the Sultanate of Sulu and the complexities of inheriting sovereign claims. For Malaysia, Sabah is a vital part of its federation, contributing to its diversity, economy, and territorial integrity. This dispute also underscores the ambiguity of historical documents and how their interpretation can shape nations' fates. The 1878 agreement, written in a blend of languages and contexts, highlights the challenges of translating historical understandings into modern legal frameworks. The story of how the Philippines lost Sabah is one of missteps, missed opportunities, and shifting geopolitics. While Malaysia's control over Sabah is established, the historical memory of this dispute lingers, sparking debates among historians, politicians, and Southeast Asian communities. As we conclude this animated look into the Philippines Sabah saga, we invite you to reflect on the lessons this history offers. How do nations inherit and interpret their past, and what role do historical claims play in shaping their future? By exploring these questions, we not only connect deeper with history, but also understand the complexities of the modern world. Thank you for joining this exploration of Southeast Asian history. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for more engaging dives into history's untold stories.